Are you ready for a career upgrade? One where you are valued and respected for your expertise, where you get to use your strengths every day, where you're doing work that matters, where you have healthy boundaries, and where you're paid really freaking well. And not only that, but you get to use your privilege to open doors and support others in their pursuit of their own upgraded careers. Well, if that sounds good, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Nicole Case, and after a decades-long career in corporate HR, I'm sharing my behind-the-scenes insider knowledge on how you can upgrade your own career and succeed in this wild corporate world. Each episode will have practical, actionable takeaways that you'll be able to implement right away with some healthy doses of encouragement and maybe a kick in the pants or two. Plus, you'll hear from other amazing women who have upgraded their own careers on their terms. So pour yourself a favorite beverage and let's dive into today's episode. I'm so excited to have you meet my good friend, Kelly Nolan, on the podcast today. Kelly is an attorney turned time management strategist and mom of two beautiful little girls. After experiencing overwhelm as a young patent litigator in Boston, Kelly figured out a time management system that helped her show up in the ways that she wanted at work and at home without requiring her brain to somehow magically remember it all. She now empowers other professional working women to manage their personal, family, and career roles with less stress and more calm using her realistic time management system, the Bright Method. The Bright Method has been featured in Bloomberg Businessweek, and Kelly's work has been published in Forbes, Fast Company, Insider, and Parents. More importantly, the Bright Method works for real women, helping them manage it all with more clarity, less stress, and the confidence to hold boundaries at work and at home. Again, so excited for this conversation. It was such a good one. Get out those notebooks, start taking some notes, and start calendaring things into your calendar, my friend. So let's get right to the episode. Welcome back to the Upgraded Leader Podcast. My name is Nicole Case and your host as always. Today, I am so excited to be with my dear friend, Kelly Nolan, and we are talking about all things time management and productivity, which I don't think you can have enough podcast episodes about this topic. Like, I just really don't think you can, especially with Kelly here, because I love her perspective on all of this. And so I'm so excited, Kelly, that you're here. And
well, I'm thrilled.
Yes.
Thrilled. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So first, I think your career journey is just so interesting. And I would just love if you could just tell us just kind of like where you got started and just kind of like how you've gotten to where you are today.
Sure thing. So I was a patent litigator in Boston and California. And up until that point in my life, I had been decently organized. I used paper planners and felt pretty good. And then I walked into practicing law and just got really overwhelmed pretty quickly. And on the outside, I looked like I had it together, but inside I was stretched, way too thin, just constantly worried I was going to drop a ball. I would be like out at a meal with a friend and like trying to focus and like work thoughts would snag me and I'd be like over there in that corner in my head, but trying to look like I was engaged. And I just wasn't enjoying like adult life as much as I wanted to. And I looked for a lot of help out there in terms of time and task management, and nothing really stuck. Mm-hmm. And then slowly over time, I started piecing together my own little system. And then I kept practicing live. Like really, it was a system that helped me get to kind of where I thought other people were. Mm-hmm. And so then I just kept practicing. And then it wasn't until years later that I found out, oh, other people like feel the way I do. And it kind of happened at around the same time that I also was starting to be unhappy practicing law. I'd loved practicing in Boston. We'd moved to California for my husband's job and it just wasn't in the same spot. And so I was like, you know what, let me try and see if people are interested in learning this. And it is what I've been doing since 2017. I am the last person anyone would have thought would have jumped from the legal profession to especially run my own thing. It was like I wanted to be a lawyer since 6th grade. So it definitely was a big left turn, but it's been awesome. And I've really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, I love that. I think that's so interesting too. Cause like, nobody wakes up, when they're 6 and is like, I want to be a time management strategist, right? Like nobody says that. But I also love how you said that like people thought that you had it all like together. And I totally resonate with that because when I tell people that like I am not a naturally organized person, they're really surprised by it.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, I've been white knuckling this whole thing for a long time. And similar, like I've just had to kind of like piece together systems just to kind of keep myself together because it's been important to me to
Yeah.
succeed and to continue to grow in my career. And I knew that would hold me back. And so I have tried, like you said, I've tried absolutely everything, paper planners, other courses, just all kinds of just like different, processes out there. But I love how you specifically describe the bright method, which is your
Yep.
process that you've put together. You describe it as realistic time management. And I love that. So like talk to us about how this bright method is realistic and how that's different from maybe some other time management systems and processes that are out there.
Well, I like emphasizing realistic because I think I mean it in two ways. One is that it's realistic in that it's doable for and it's really designed for the professional working woman, so it's geared to be realistic for her. It's also by realistic, I mean helps her be realistic on what her expectations are to
Mhm.
get done in a day, and that can look different for a lot. Every person it can look different for, but for you, like I think what was tricky for me is when I was practicing law, people would swing by and be like, "Do you have the bandwidth to take this on? Do you have the capacity to take this on?" And I didn't really know what that meant. Like, I knew what they meant conceptually, but like from a practical standpoint, like, how did I know how full my day was? I don't know. Or like, not even my day. Like, they're talking about taking on a months long case. Like,
Mhm.
how do I know if I have time for that? And so, using a system like I teach has helped, and I use and live and breathe has taught me of like, oh, okay, I have a more visual, objective understanding of what my capacity is and what my workload is.
Mhm.
And now I can evaluate whether I have the time and energy availability to take something on in a realistic way so that I can keep my schedule realistic as well. So hopefully that wasn't too convoluted of an answer, but that's kind of what I emphasize with the realistic
Yeah,
side of it.
no, I love that. I think, and that makes perfect sense for me because I know that that's probably the biggest piece that I struggle with time management is that like I want to take on all the things. I want to do a lot of things. Like I like staying full and busy and have my hands in a lot of stuff, but like then I like tell myself like, "Oh yeah, I totally have time for all of that." And like my ADHD brain like cannot like you said, can't conceptualize what that can't really wrap my head around what does it actually mean that have the
Yep.
bandwidth? Like I can't
Yeah.
wrap my head around that. And I've always also struggled with the idea of like how long does something actually take,
Yep.
to do. Like I remember working at a job and I was shifting internally from one job to another one. And I needed to pass on my work just I need to just transition my work to someone else. And they like asked me to like list out how long it took me to do certain things. I'm like, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
that was like I remember that was the first time somebody asked me a question like that. And I'm like so confused by it. And then later in my career, I worked for a company like that the majority of their employees were billable. And so they had to like track their time like down to the 15-minute. And I'm like, I could not do that. Like that like I can't wrap my head around like trying to track my time down to that amount.
Well, and even when you do, I mean, I come from the legal world where you're doing every 6 minutes,
Mhm.
and, like, even when you track it, you still don't reflect back on how long did that ultimately
Mhm.
take. I mean, even when you're used to that, it still catches you off guard when people ask things like that.
Yeah.
Or also even when I was tracking time, they'd be like even to myself, if I was gonna draft a reply brief or something, I'd be like, "I think that'll take me, like, 10 hours." And then when I actually break down all the steps that go into that and guess those and we're better at guessing small things.
Yeah.
So guess, like, the bite-sized steps and add it up, it's like, "Oh, that's gonna take me, like, 30 hours to do. Okay." And, like, you just start reevaluating
Uh-huh.
and seeing time more realistically when you do things like
Yeah.
that. But I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So like again, I end up inadvertently overextending myself, not
Yeah.
in some, of course there's sometimes it's like guilt and stuff is in there. But a lot of times just because, oh yeah, that totally sounds doable. And then I get into it and I'm like, oh crap, like totally bit off more than I can chew. Now I've overextended myself. So how do you actually figure out what your real capacity is versus what you think it should be? What you think it should be?
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously this is like a big topic, but I'll do my
Yeah.
best to kind of give a good synopsis that's actually practical that you can run with too. Is I'm a big believer that time is time is time is time. Like our personal life and our professional life all draw on the same bank of time.
Mhm.
So we have to look at them together and holistically, because I think often we're tempted to, like, if we just get work under control, then, things will be better, which is valid. I mean, we spend so much time that it would help, but to really have the help, it has to be across all. And so what I like to do is help people first unpack their invisible to-do list so that we
Mm.
have an understanding of what is your capacity to give to other things. And by your invisible to-do list, I mean the things that we all do, especially think in your personal life, like mornings and evenings. And I don't mean like the perfect morning routine. That's not what I mean. But like, what are you doing in the mornings and the evenings and maybe like midday for lunch or things like that? And what are all those bite-sized steps? And I don't mean you have to like calendar, like brush teeth, but if it's like showering and getting ready, if you have kids, like packing up lunches or getting kids out the door or whatever that might be, walking a dog if you have a dog,
Mhm.
preparing meals, like because that takes a solid amount of time. So many of these things, I know it sounds silly to talk about calendaring them, but they never make it into a calendar. They never make it onto a to-do list, but they take up hours of our day, like hours. And so if you're not accounting for them and instead you see all this white space in your calendar and you beat yourself up because you didn't get 8 hours of work done during, before noon, but in reality, you didn't have 8 hours of work to give before noon. I'm just making this up, but
Right.
you get the point. Then you start getting a better understanding of where your time is already going and what time remains to give to other work. So that's like a first step. And we have invisible to dos at work as well.
Mhm.
Like email, we often don't calendar time for email, but it takes up hours of our day. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying you have to calendar, the average worker spends like 2.6 hours on email. And that was in 2012. My guess is it's way more now. But you know, if you're spending 3 hours a day on email, you don't need to calendar 3 hours a day, but could you calendar at least 1 hour a
Mhm.
day to give you that time to really process email? And then you can deal with it in nooks and crannies, like email lends itself well too. But those, just thinking about what are all the invisible to dos? What are all the things I'm doing that aren't on my calendar?
Mhm.
And let me start plotting them in. And that's the beautiful part of a digital calendar. You just repeat it for the days that it makes sense. You can always move it if you want to move it around. But that can really help you start seeing, oh, these are all the things I'm doing that I wasn't appreciating that I was doing. So that can really help
Yeah.
give you a visual, a more realistic understanding of what is the remaining capacity you have to give to the one off things. The next step I would do is to then plot out what your current workload is, kind of, and that I hate making things sound easier than they are on the time management front, but really breaking down your projects, plotting out all those bite-sized steps so you see, okay, this is my current workload right now.
Mhm.
Build in some flex time because as we are all very bad at estimating how long things take. And so inevitably we're going to underestimate, inevitably curveballs are happening. So plot out and physically block flex time in your calendar.
Mhm.
And then the final thing I would say, because I know I've been talking a while, is that when you get those new opportunities, before you commit or not commit, is plot out what you think the cost time wise would be. So if you're
Mhm.
like, I think this will take me 4 hours a week to do this thing, I would plot out 6 hours a week for it, see where it would go. I mean, you can break it up into the steps, plot it out, and you can always, this is again, beautiful part of a digital calendar, you can always delete it. But you see, okay, tentative XYZ project, XYZ volunteering position, whatever it might be. And what I love about that is that one, you see, okay, do I have even the time to do this?
Mhm.
But what else in my life would get booted if I took this on? And that can be, we never are making decisions like this in a vacuum, but we kind of make the decision as if it was in a vacuum, as if it were in a vacuum. And so it's helpful to see it interact with everything else in there to have you. I mean, sometimes you just get that ick feeling when you see what else would have to move around and
Mhm.
that there's your answer. And so that can be really helpful and it's a opportunity you don't get to evaluate how you feel without doing something like that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love all of that. And like you and I have talked, like we do have a really similar approach to time management now. Cause
Yep.
again, I think my biggest struggle, I think it was really highlighted for me when I moved from my corporate job into my business full time. And I was like, oh, I've got all of this time,
Yep.
I'm gonna totally be able to get a whole bunch of stuff done, and, like, that proved to not be true. And so I really realized that, okay, I need to figure something out, and so that's when I really started diving into this idea of time management, which is how I met you actually several
Yep.
years ago.
I heard you speak at an event on this very topic. And so this idea of, if we back up just a minute, the idea around calendaring the invisible stuff, that's important too. Like I calendar like gym get ready time. like I
Yeah.
calendar that. If I'm running errands, like I calendar running errands, because I think we do, like if we just put everything on a to-do list and we're like, oh yeah, I can totally get to those things today. And it's like, but if you have all of these other things that take up time, like you don't have the capacity to do it. And I think, and I know for me, I'm a super, super visual person. So to have it in a calendar like that, to say,
Yep.
listen, you only have 24 hours. Like you cannot make more of that. Like you just can't.
Yeah.
And so those things take up like that precious resource of time. And so I think calendaring those invisible things, I think, is definitely important. The other thing for me, I'll say, is it's not even just the invisible stuff; it's that mental load too that
Yes.
takes up. It might not take up physical time, but it takes up, I don't know, like energy, or like it takes up brain space basically. Like if it's not on
Yeah.
my physical calendar, it still takes up the brain space and it weighs on me. So
Absolutely.
like I've been like, for instance, I've been trying to make a dentist appointment for weeks for myself, and I keep forgetting to do it. And it's like sitting right here. It's like sitting right
Yeah.
here. Like, Nicole, you need to make this dentist appointment. And I keep forgetting to do it. So then I beat myself up for it, because like I know today is Friday. We're recording this on a Friday. They're closed today. So I can't make it. So I can't make it today, even if I wanted to. Even when I got off this call, I
Yeah.
wanted to do it. So like, how do we handle the mental load of some of these other things that, that we need to take on, particularly as women, that we take, like, planning meals and making doctor's appointments and vacations and just whatever, all those other like day-to-day things that
Yeah.
also just take up the mental space, not even the physical space on your calendar.
Absolutely. I think a real quick moment for me back when I first started kind of really developing this approach was just accepting my brain does not remember this stuff on its own. And nor should it. Like it has better things to do than be my like alarm clock, you know? So really kind of thinking like, okay, the dentist, I always try and like kind of remove the judgment from it because I have those moments too, right? Where I'm like, ugh, if I'd done this earlier, whatever it might be, they're going to happen still. But then instead of like beating myself up, it's just being like, okay, well, I can't do it right now. So let me calendar time next Tuesday or Wednesday when the offices are open, then it works for me. And I'll put that on my calendar now. So that just like gives me, I can weirdly let it go if I do that. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
now I have a reminder to do it when it's going to work. I can always move it around a little bit, when that time rolls around. But now I don't have to remember. Like I can tell my brain I don't have to remember to do it. But I love your point on a larger scale of the mental load of this stuff, because I like to think of it like when you work with me, I will clutter up your calendar way more than it used to be,
Mhm.
but we're going to lighten your mind. Like that is really what a lot of it comes down to. And what I love about that is you can see like, was this even realistic in the first place? Like we hold ourselves to this standard of like getting all this stuff done or, showing up as this friend in this way or things like that. Where when we plot it all out in a calendar, we're like, whoa, this wasn't even going to work at baseline without curveballs.
Yeah.
And so that can be huge to figure out so you can make adjustments. It's also a lot easier to delegate out to other people. So if you have a partner or you have a nanny or you have a family member who could help with certain things, whatever it might be, but definitely home partners as well. It's so valuable to lay everything out that you're trying to do so that it's still a load, but it's not just a mental load. And then you are more empowered to say like, hey, I need help with this specific thing and this specific thing. And that would give me a lot more freedom. Also, why making it all visual, what I love too is I've had some clients who are like, I don't want to overwhelm my partner by showing them this. And I'm like, maybe they need to be a little overwhelmed with how much you're doing so they understand why you're asking, hey, can you do this thing and this thing? And that can really help there. So just sharing that on the mental load as well as my goal is to help you and I think this approach and your approach, Nicole, lightens the mental load, but also helps you share the actual physical load as well more in addition as well.
Yeah, no, and that's such a good point. So first of all, like just calendaring some of those mental load things. because I talk a lot about just like journaling and stuff like that. Like when something's in your head, it's chaos, but when you like journal it
Yep.
out and like it there's some magic that happens there. And so I think you're
Yeah.
right that if you've got something that's like again weighing on you, put it on your calendar somewhere, and then you're right, like it's there. Like you don't have to remember it. It's in your calendar. Your calendar will remind you of it. And so it's
Well,
no longer it's no longer the mental load of, oh, I have to remember to
yeah.
do this. And I actually really loved what you said about like my brain has better things to do
Yeah.
than to be my alarm clock because and I say this to clients all the time about like whenever they're trying to prioritize their time and the tasks that they're working on. It's like I'm always asking them, what is it that you're paid to do? Like, what are you paid to do? Like, your salary is paying you to be the strategic thought leader, to think of the direction of this business, whatever it is that you're paid to do. It's probably not to remember to, set a meeting up with someone or to make a doctor's appointment or whatever. Like, that's what we have the machines for, right? Like, that's what they're
Yeah.
for. Let's utilize those.
Yeah. And this is something that I'm always applying to new situations. So here, I'm just going to give an example, and this is going to sound weird, but like my daughter is starting to ride the bus for the first time, and it's weirdly stressing me out because it's kind of stressful for her, and it is what it is.
Mhm.
I literally calendared last night. I'm like, we get, I think, 30 days to decide like if we're going to continue doing it. I got calendared 2 weeks from today. From yesterday was the first day, and was like, how is it going? Reevaluate. And until then, I'm not making any decisions about it. I'm letting it go. I'm still observing and taking in information of how it's going, but I've let myself off the hook of every single day, maybe every hour, because of how stressful it is for me, of constantly being like, should we be doing this? Should we be doing this? All this
Mhm.
kind of stuff. Like, let it go. And I do this in my business all the time and you could do this in your career or wherever it is like, I'm thinking about doing this, or I don't know if we should be taking on this project, or I don't even know if I want to stay in this job, or whatever it might want to be, might want it to be. And really kind of just trying to table it. I know it doesn't work perfectly and again, realistic, but if you can say, you know what, let me give this new approach a month shot and then we'll reevaluate, calendaring that and saying, reevaluate this in like a month can really help you let it go. Exactly what you're talking
Mm.
about, Nicole, of like journaling and then maybe bridge whatever's coming out of that journaling session from you from like an action standpoint and use that calendar to help you bring that to life a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I get really excited about like new time management and productivity strategies. And what I'm super guilty of is like spending a ton of time like creating this brand new system that I have never used ever in my life. And then like Monday morning rolls around and I like mess it up. And then I'm like, all done.
Yep.
So like just forget it, so that's a huge pitfall for me in terms of like
Yep.
trying to get a handle on, you know, trying to get a handle on things. So what are some other potential pitfalls that people should be aware of when it comes to either embarking on a new time management process or just managing their time in general?
Yep. From a general standpoint, I'm a big fan of simplifying. So while, I mean, I don't, just to be clear, I don't think time management is like easy or simple. I wish it were. I think we naturally think it should be. And therefore, when we're not good at it, we shame ourselves instead of just acknowledging that time management's how we manage our entire life and all the things that go into it. So it's hard. That said, what I mean by simplifying is not having a paper planner and a wall calendar and to-do lists and post-it notes and a task management app and a project management app. And we manage things in our heads and we have our inbox. Like it's
Don't look around my
like,
office right now. Like I've
I mean,
got,
it's
and my husband makes
totally,
fun of me all the time. My husband actually just yesterday, he was up in my office and he was like, "How's that new bulletin board coming?" And like, it's like blank. And then he also got me a whiteboard and it's blank. And then I have a year calendar over here on this one that I've done nothing with. And then all the notebooks and at a sauna that I haven't looked at in a year. So yeah, guilty.
yeah. So, and it's so normal. Like no one taught us how to do this. So it's like, there's truly no judgment. And that is exactly how I'm speaking from my own experience. That's what I was doing too. And so what I really encourage you to do is like go all in on a system, and you can bridge other things into it. So for example, we were talking about like if you like to journal or if you do use something like Asana, or obviously we all use an email inbox and action items are going to come into there. like you're going to have action items come at you from other places, but bridging them always into a system and building into that system time to do that. So, that I think we both love like a weekly planning session. And so using that weekly planning session to look up and say, okay, where are all my action items right now? Do I have any meeting notes I haven't processed? Have I gone through my email inbox and gotten everything from there? Just like kind of going through like, where are all the action items coming at me, grabbing them, figuring out, okay, now when am I going to do them in my calendar, and just updating that calendar to be cohesive or I should say comprehensive is what I mean, of all the things you want to do. What I want you to hear though is that don't expect yourself to feel the pressure of doing that all the time, because that's a really hard thing to keep up with. And my goal is to help you actually get out there and live life and do the work and that kind of stuff, not just like constantly live in your calendar, making sure it's perfect. And so what I love about that weekly planning session is I teach looking ahead at the next 2 weeks. And so you can just throw things into your calendar for, I'm not going to call that dentist for 2 more weeks. I just don't have the time and it's not that important. So let me throw that into 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, and deal with it then. Oh, I have this idea for this project. I know we can't do that right now. Let me calendar out 3 weeks from now, consider starting to do this. And if I don't want to do it, I'll punt it out. You can throw stuff into that calendar for down the road, trusting that each week you're going to look ahead at the next 2 weeks and smooth it out. You might even look beyond that for deadlines. So you might not be plotting out perfectly the next, couple months, but you'll look ahead at maybe in the next month or two of deadlines and make sure that nothing's coming down the road that will surprise you. And then you smooth things out. So that's, I guess, just to kind of take a step back, simplifying down into one system can be hugely helpful. And then building in the maintenance time into that system to help make sure that it's working for you is great. And then you're really smart. Like everyone listening to this, my guess is very smart and has their own judgment on this. Like if you live it in a very fast paced environment at work, you might need to also have another check-in session another time a week so that you're readjusting your plan that you came up with for this week might have to be tweaked on Tuesday afternoon to accommodate changes that have happened. You put your own twist on this, but simplify down into one system. At occasional points, go look for the other parts of things that you're using, but bring them back into this one system that you're using, and then build in that maintenance system, knowing that that front end work will have such major payoffs. So you're basically like corralling a lot of the decision making so that the rest of the time you're not in decision fatigue all the time. You just get to execute and do.
I love that. And I will also say that when I started putting things like my to-dos onto the calendar was such a game changer so that I could move things around easily.
Yeah.
Because when things are on your to-do list, like you don't get the ability to move things around in that way. So like I will say I have felt a little bit less guilt when I look at my calendar. I'm like, that block of time that I had for a task, that's not going to happen today. And I just drag it to a different spot. Like, again, easy peasy. And again, the mental load of, I haven't done that thing yet is not like that mental load is not there because I've just been able to just very easily drag it to something else.
I could not agree more because I find that surprising. I think the reason I'm sorry, I was like all excited to talk and jump in, but the reason I find that so surprising is that when we talk about time blocking, some people really resist it because they're like, I don't want to live my life according to boxes. That looks super rigid and overstructured and I don't like it. And there are people who teach, put it in your calendar and then you live and die by your calendar. Like that's not my approach. And it's definitely not your approach either from the sound of it. And what I am so surprised at is by using a system like this, I can be just as spontaneous as I used to be. I'm like, same thing. I'm like, I don't really feel like doing that right now. But I actually enjoy the changed plans more because I can move it. I might have to move something else into the current time to make it work. But very rarely can I not move it. Like very, very rarely can I be like, oh gosh, this really needs to happen now. Often I can move it and I can see, okay, this new plan works. It's almost just like a neutral thing. I'm like moving it. I have a now new neutral plan and I can go take that nap or I can go do this different thing that I'm in the mood to do or things like that. And I don't have that guilt or anxiety of, can it all still get done? And that is the really beautiful part of this. I could not agree with you more. I know I'm just like repeating what you said, but I really want to drive it home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We could go on and on, obviously, on this topic all day. And I want to allow you to share how do you work with people to go deeper on this topic? Because again, like we could be here all day if we wanted to. So how do you work with people on this, even further?
Yeah, so I work with professional working women. So a lot of attorneys, women in corporate, physicians, professors, people like that, and also small business owners. On time management, I run 8-week programs twice a year to walk you step by step through the Bright method and learning that. And it's kind of a lot of what we've been talking about today, really getting clear on the personal and the work and visible to dos, the repetitive tasks. How do you want that to go? When do you want to hold meetings? All that kind of stuff. And then using a 6-step process to break down projects so that you create that realistic game plan, have a better objective sense of your workload, and then really dig into that weekly planning session, which I do think is the cornerstone of like any time management system, is just having that opportunity to like look up from the week, look ahead, make sure you got it all before you dig back in. And then we really work for a couple weeks, like building it, like just doing reps with the whole system all together. But if you're more interested in just getting a taste of it, I have a free 5-day program that people can check out. That's called the Reset and Refresh. You can find it at kellynolan.com/refresh. And it will just help give you very practical strategies through 5 days to give you a taste of the whole Bright method.
I love that. Yeah, we'll link that in the show notes out on the website for everyone to go find that free 5-day course. That sounds amazing. So like just where can everyone just kind of find you just in general if they want to learn more and keep following along?
Yeah, well, I hang out most of the time on Instagram. So I'm at _KellyNolan_. I know that we like connect on there as well. And if you have any questions on any of this, if you cannot tell, I like truly love nerding out on this stuff. So feel free to shoot me a message on there because I really, really love like digging into it and also helping you really tailor it to you. I think that time management is incredibly personal. And even though I teach a system, everyone tweaks it to have it match them and also match their life phase. Because our life, I've used this since I was single as an attorney to dating and married as an attorney to having 2 kids and a dog and now running a business. But it's looked different at every phase of my life and it looks different for every client. And so if you have questions on like, how would I make this work for me? Like that's one of the most fun parts of my job. So feel free to reach out there.
Awesome. So good. So good. Kelly, thank you so much for blocking the time to come and chat with us about this today. And so excited just to continue to dig in and learn more.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. It was a true pleasure. Really fun.
Thanks, Kelly.